You step out of the shower, and there it is. That little cluster of hair on the drain, matted against the white, more than there was last week. You don't say anything. You just push it down with your foot and turn the water off. Then you stand at the mirror, and the light above it is doing you no favors. And you tilt your head the way you always tilt it now, the angle that hides the part where the scalp shows through. You've got a hat for the days you don't want to fight it. You've got a whole drawer of bottles that promised you something and gave you nothing. Now, I'm going to tell you how to keep the hair you've still got and thicken what's thinning for about $11 a month. Not 11 a day, 11 a month. And most of it done with your own two hands in the time it takes your coffee to brew. The industry is known since 1988, and by 1997 they'd made sure you'd never hear about it. My name's Frank Moretti. My grandfather Joe opened Moretti's barbershop in 1946, right after he came home from the war. My father Sal ran that chair through the 50s and 60s, and I swept the hair off that floor when I was 10 years old. Got my own license in 1974. 50 years I stood behind that chair before I hung it up in 2022. More than 100,000 heads have passed under my hands. And now that I'm retired, I've got no product to sell you, no boss to answer to, nobody left to protect. So I can finally say the things a working barber never could. Let me tell you what this is costing you. The average man chasing this thing spends somewhere between $200 and $400 a year on shampoos, serums, foams, and thickening sprays that wash right back down that drain. Do that for 10 years and you've spent $3,000–$4,000 to watch the same hair leave anyway. But the money's the small part. Here's the thing. In a survey of 2,000 men, 94% said going bald was their single biggest fear about getting old. 94, not 40, not 60, 94 out of 100. And I watched what that fear does to a man. It's the wedding you skip the photos at. It's the way you stop looking people in the eye when they're taller than you. It's a 52-year-old man who looks 62 because his scalp is shouting it before his face gets a chance to speak. I saw grown men near tears in my chair over this, so don't let anybody tell you it's just hair. Now stay with me all the way to the end because I'm going to read you something. It's a page out of my father's leather notebook, page 41, dated the spring of 1958. A scalp routine he wrote down in pencil that half the men in our town got every 2 weeks and never thought twice about. When you hear the words he actually wrote, you'll understand why they buried it. Let me take you back into that shop. You walk in off the street, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. Bay rum, witch hazel, hot towels steaming in the cabinet. There's a rack of boar bristle brushes, and my father cleaned each one like it was a surgical tool. There's a jar of wild root on the shelf, a bottle of Vitalis, a tube of Brill cream for the young fellas who wanted the shine. And here's what most people forget. A haircut back then wasn't just a cut. It was a scalp treatment you didn't even ask for, because it came with the price. My father would finish the trim, and then he'd wrap a hot towel around your head, let the heat open everything up. Then he'd take a friction lotion, witch hazel, a little tonic, and he'd work it into your scalp with his fingertips. Not a pat, not a dab, a real working of the scalp, both hands, 4 or 5 minutes, until the skin went warm and pink under his fingers. Every man got it. The banker, the plumber, the kid before his first dance. Now think about that for a second. My father did that on the same heads for 30 years, my grandfather before him. And you sit in a chair long enough, you start to notice things no study's going to tell you. The men who came in weekly, who got that scalp worked over and over, decade after decade, and they kept their hair longer. Not all of them. Nature's nature. But as a group, plain as day. My father used to tap a man's crown and say, "Good soil up here." He talked about the scalp like a garden. And back then, men washed their hair once, maybe twice a week. Daily washing didn't become the American habit until the 70s, so they weren't stripping that scalp raw every single morning either. Nobody called it science. They called it a shave and a haircut. But they were feeding the soil, and the crop came in thicker for it. So let me tell you why it actually works in plain words, because there's real reason under the ritual. You've got a hormone in your body called DHT. Now, DHT isn't evil. You need it. But in men with the pattern, DHT slowly chokes the hair follicles on top of the head. It shrinks them. Each cycle, the follicle gets a little smaller, and the hair it makes gets a little finer, a little shorter, until one day it's making a hair so thin and pale you can barely call it a hair. That's called miniaturization. The follicle isn't dead, it's starving. It's a plant in bad soil, still alive, just too weak to grow anything you'd notice. Over half of all men show this pattern by age 50. That's around 35 million men in this country alone. Now here's where the scalp work comes in. That follicle needs blood. Blood is what carries the oxygen and the nutrients up to the root and is what carries the waste away. When the scalp gets tight and neglected and starved of circulation, and a scalp on top of your head under a hat with skin pulled tight over bone gets very little blood flow, that follicle's already fighting with one hand tied. When you work that scalp with real friction, you flood it. You bring the blood up to the surface. You feed the soil. You're not killing the DHT, but you're giving the follicle a fighting chance to hold on and thicken instead of shrinking away. And it isn't just the rubbing, there's the tonic. In 2015, in the journal Skin Med, researchers ran a proper randomized trial. 100 men. Half of them used rosemary oil on the scalp. The other half used minoxidil, the 2% stuff, the drugstore standard. 6 months later, they counted the hairs. Both groups gained hair, and the counts came out comparable to the pharmacy drug. And the rosemary group had less scalp itching to boot. One plant oil, a few dollars a bottle, standing shoulder to shoulder with the patented product. I'm not a doctor, I'm a barber, but I've seen more scalps than any doctor ever will. And what the study measured with a microscope, my father measured with 50 years of fingertips. So why did all this vanish? Why doesn't your barber wrap your head in a hot towel and work your scalp for 5 minutes anymore? Follow the money and follow the dates. In 1988, a company got FDA approval for a drug called minoxidil, sold as Rogaine. Funny thing, it started life as a blood pressure pill. They noticed people growing hair and turned it into a hair product. Then in 1997, a second drug, finasteride, got approved. And both of these things share one beautiful quality. If you're the one selling them, you have to use them forever. The day you stop, whatever you gained walks right back out. And it takes 4 to 6 months just to see anything, so you're locked in and paying long before you know if it works. Now put yourself in the shoes of the men who sell bottles. On one side, you've got a scalp ritual a man does with his own hands for pennies that a barber taught him once for free. On the other, you've got a bottle he has to buy every single month for the rest of his life. Which one gets the advertising budget? Which one gets taught in the schools, pushed in the magazines, stacked on the shelf under that bright pharmacy light? The scalp ritual didn't disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because it couldn't be put in a bottle and sold to you every month. The dry shampoo market alone is around $4 billion a year right now, projected to double by 2030, and that's just one dusty shelf. The whole hair loss business is billions stacked on billions. You cannot build an empire like that on a hot towel and a man's own 10 fingers. So the ritual got quietly retired, and the bottle took the chair. Now, I know some of you are listening to this and thinking, Frank, that's a nice story, but I'm too far gone. My hairline's been marching back for 6, 8, 10 years. Stay with me because this next part is specifically for you. As long as there's any fuzz up there at all, any fine, pale, wispy growth, those follicles are miniaturized, not gone. And miniaturized means there's still something to feed. Here's exactly what to do. Write it down. You'll only need to hear it once. You'll need 1 bottle of a light carrier oil, jojoba, or plain almond oil, a few dollars at any grocery store, and 1 small bottle of rosemary essential oil, the real steam distilled kind, about $8 online or at any health shop. That's your whole shopping list. Together it runs you around $11 and lasts you 2-3 months. Mix your tonic first. Into 3 tablespoons of the carrier oil, put 5 drops of rosemary oil. 5 drops, no more. This stuff is strong, and you never put essential oil straight on your skin. Shake it. That's your batch. Now the routine, and you do this at night 3 times a week, say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so you remember. Warm a towel under the hot tap, wring it out, and hold it over your scalp for 2 minutes to open things up, just like my father did. Then put about a half teaspoon of your oil on your fingertips. And here's the part that matters most, the part that's free. You massage. Fingertips, not nails. Firm pressure, enough to move the scalp over the bone, not just slide across the hair. Small circles. Start at the front hairline, work back over the crown, down the sides. 5 full minutes by the clock. Don't cheat the clock. 5 minutes feels long the first time, and that's exactly why nobody does it and exactly why it works. Then leave it. Sleep on it with an old pillowcase. Rinse in the morning with a gentle wash, and only wash it 2 or 3 times a week, not every day. On your off nights, do the massage dry, no oil, just 3 minutes of bringing that blood up before bed. Boar bristle brush a couple times a day if you want to earn extra credit. It distributes the natural oil and it drags a little circulation along with it. $11, 5 minutes, your own 2 hands. Now here's the honesty you won't get from anybody selling you something. This will not grow hair on a scalp that's been bald and smooth and shiny for 10 years. That soil's gone fallow. Those follicles are truly gone, and no oil on earth brings a dead follicle back. What this does is keep what you've got and thicken what's thinning. That's the honest promise, and it's a good one. And it is slow. You will see nothing for the first 8 to 12 weeks. Nothing. If you quit at week 6 because the mirror looks the same, you quit right before the door opened. Give it 3 months before you judge it, and take a photo today so you're not fooling yourself later. A few things straight. I'm not a doctor, and this isn't a cure for baldness. Nobody has one. If your hair's coming out suddenly, in patches or fast, that is a different animal entirely. Go see a dermatologist, because that can mean something medical. Never put the rosemary oil on undiluted, and do a patch test on your inner arm first to make sure your skin agrees with it. And if your doctor has you on something already, don't you dare stop it on my account. This sits right alongside whatever he's got you on. It doesn't replace it. Let me tell you about Ray. Ray was 58, came to my chair every 3 weeks for I don't know how many years. Insurance man, big laugh, and a crown that was going thin and shiny at the back, where he couldn't see it, but everybody behind him could. He tried the foam, hated it, stopped. So one afternoon, I wrote this exact routine on the back of an appointment card and told him to quit whining and rub his own head. Ray was a skeptic. He came in at the 6-week mark and said, "Frank, nothing." I told him to keep going and shut up about it. Around month 3, his wife noticed first and said the back of his head didn't shine through under the kitchen light the way it used to. By month 5, when I lifted the hair at his crown with my comb, there was a fuzz of new fine hairs coming in where it had been bare skin. Not a full head, not a miracle. Just a crown that quit retreating and started filling back toward the middle. He kept that up for years. Last time I saw him, he still had it. Now let me read you what I promised. My father's notebook, worn leather, his pencil handwriting gone soft at the edges. Page 41, spring of 1958. This was what, 65, 66 years ago now. At the top, he'd written scalp, twice monthly, all chairs. And under it, the tonic, and then a line I've never forgotten. In his own hand, in pencil, he wrote, "Feed the ground and the crop stays. A man's hair leaves when the barber quits touching his head." That's it. That's the whole secret. Written by a man who never read a study in his life, who just stood in one spot for 30 years and paid attention. Feed the ground and the crop stays. He knew in 1958 what a laboratory published in 2015, and he did it for the price of a haircut. The knowledge didn't disappear. It just stopped being profitable to teach you. There's no monthly bottle in a hot towel and a pair of hands, so the world quietly forgot how to hold them. So let me ask you something, and do me a favor and answer down in the comments. What did your father or your grandfather use on his hair? Was it Wild Root? Was it Vitalis? Was it Brill Cream? Or was it something out of a jar with no label at all? I want to hear the name and the man, and tell me what state you're in while you're at it. And subscribe, because the next one I've been sitting on for a while. I'm going to tell you about the one cheap thing every barber in the 50s kept in a jar by the sink, the one we washed men's hair with before the pretty bottle showed up, and why the shampoo companies needed it gone. Feed the ground, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.